415 BC, the city is the jewel of the Greek world, a beacon of democracy and culture. But in the shadows of the Parthenon, a man is about to set in motion a chain of events that will bring it all to ruin. He was a man of dazzling charisma and boundless ambition. A student of the great philosopher Socrates, he possessed a brilliant military mind and a silver tongue that could sway any crowd. His name was Alcibiades. He lived a life of scandalous luxury, his every move a topic of gossip and fascination. He was the city's golden boy, the embodiment of Athenian confidence and power.
This is the story of a man who was both a hero and a traitor, a savior and a destroyer, a military genius who led his city to glorious victories, switching allegiances to 3 different sides only to orchestrate his own downfall. His life was a whirlwind of scandalous affairs, political intrigue, and shifting loyalties that reads more like a tragic play than a historical account. A man whose personal betrayals would change the course of the Peloponnesian War and seal the fate of an empire. This is the story of Alcibiades, the Playboy general who betrayed Athens. Our story begins in the golden age of Athens, a city brimming with intellectual and cultural ferment. It is here that Alcibiades was born in 450 BC, into the highest echelons of the aristocracy, blessed with immense wealth, striking good looks, and a sharp intellect. His lineage through his mother traced back to the powerful, controversial, and enormously wealthy Alcmaeonidae family. From a young age, his life was marked by a restless, almost insatiable ambition and a flagrant disregard for convention. This was a young man who seemed to have everything, yet always craved more. His guardian, the great statesman Pericles, ensured he had the finest education available. According to Plutarch, Alcibiades had several famous teachers, but it was his relationship with one in particular that would echo through history, the philosopher Socrates. While he was well trained in the art of rhetoric, it was his wild, unruly behavior that truly set him apart and was chronicled by numerous Greek and Latin writers. He was known to roam the city with a gang of followers, engaging in disruptive pranks, and his extravagant lifestyle was the talk of Athens. It was this very wildness that drew Socrates to him. The philosopher saw past the arrogance and vanity. He saw a brilliant mind on the verge of being corrupted by its own privilege and sought to guide it toward virtue and self-knowledge. Their connection was electric and complex. Socrates was one of the few people who could humble the proud young nobleman, often challenging him in public dialogues and exposing the limits of his understanding. This intellectual sparring, this deep and often tumultuous mentorship would shape Alcibiades' early years, creating a bond that was part philosophical instruction and part intense personal loyalty, and a subject of endless fascination for the people of Athens. This bond, forged in the intellectual battleground of Athenian debate, would soon be tested in the crucible of actual war. Their connection wasn't merely that of a teacher and a troubled student, it was a profound loyalty that transcended the classroom. This became dramatically clear during the brutal Battle of Mantinea in 432 BC. Amid the chaos of clashing shields and spears, a young Alcibiades was wounded and fell, completely vulnerable to the enemy. It was Socrates, the older, unassuming philosopher, who stood over his fallen friend, defending him with unwavering courage and saving his life from certain death. For this act of valor, the generals awarded the prize of bravery to Alcibiades on Socrates' strong recommendation. This was a debt Alcibiades would not forget. Years later, he returned the favor. At the devastating Battle of Delium in 424 BC, the Athenian forces were routed and in full retreat. Socrates, serving as a foot soldier, found himself exposed and in peril. It was then that Alcibiades, who was serving in the cavalry, spotted his old mentor. He rode to his side and, along with his fellow soldiers, shielded Socrates from the pursuing enemy, ensuring his safe escape from the battlefield. For these two dramatic rescues, a philosopher saving a future general and that general later saving the philosopher, cemented a legendary and complex friendship, demonstrating a loyalty that ran deeper than any philosophical disagreement. But their bond was tested not only on the battlefield, but in battle for Alcibiades' very soul. While Socrates preached moderation and the pursuit of knowledge, Alcibiades dove headfirst into a world of extravagant excess. His charm and beauty made him the center of attention in any room, and he indulged in the adoration he received. The city's most lavish symposiums, its most sought-after courtesans, the endless flow of wine and flattery, this was Alcibiades' natural habitat. Yet it was into this gilded world of sensual pleasure that Socrates would often follow. He was not content to let his most promising and most troubled student squander his potential. Accounts describe Socrates pursuing him into drinking parties and brothels, not to scold, but to challenge him with relentless logic. Socrates' arguments would cut through the haze of wine and flattery, forcing Alcibiades to confront the emptiness of his pursuits and the life of virtue he was neglecting. Alcibiades himself would later confess that Socrates was the only person in the world who could make him feel shame. He admitted that after speaking with the philosopher, his life of political ambition and pleasure-seeking felt worthless. He would often be seen leaving these encounters in tears, overwhelmed by the realization of his own failings. And yet the pull of his old life was strong. Alcibiades would flee from these moments of clarity, plugging his ears as if from a siren's call, only to be drawn back once again by the irresistible force of Socrates' wisdom. This was the constant struggle that defined their relationship. A philosopher relentlessly pulling his student toward the light, and a charismatic prodigal son torn between the easy praise of the crowd and the difficult path to self-knowledge. His personal life was as tumultuous as his public one. He married Hipparete, a woman from a noble and wealthy family. However, his relentless womanizing and extravagant lifestyle reportedly drove her to attempt to publicly divorce him, a bold and unusual move for an Athenian woman of her standing. It is said she was on her way to file the official papers when Alcibiades appeared, grabbed her, and carried her home through the crowded marketplace, a display of both his power and his scandalous nature. She remained with him until her death, but his infidelities were the talk of the city. This audacity and charisma, while scandalous in his private life, propelled him into the political arena. He emerged at a critical moment during a fragile peace in the long and bloody Peloponnesian War known as the Peace of Nicias. Alcibiades saw this peace not as a path to lasting peace, but an opportunity for personal glory. He skillfully undermined the treaty through a series of brilliant political maneuvers and deceptions. Disputes over the interpretation of the treaty led the Spartans to dispatch ambassadors to Athens with full powers to arrange all unsettled matters. Alcibiades met with them in secret before they were to speak to the Athenian assembly, where they devised a brilliant plan that allowed him to gain support and form an alliance with other Greek states against Sparta. This culminated in his election as a strategist, an Athenian general. His first major test was the Battle of Mantinea in 418 BC. In a daring stroke of diplomacy, Alcibiades had managed to forge a grand alliance of Peloponnesian states, including Argos and Mantinea, to challenge Sparta in its own heartland. The Spartan army, led by their stoic and formidable king Agis II, met the coalition on the field. While the battle itself was a crushing defeat for Athens and its allies, costing the lives of notable Athenian commanders like the general Laces, Alcibiades' ability to forge the alliance in the first place solidified his reputation as a bold and influential leader.
Even in failure, he had shown he could take the fight directly to Sparta, a feat few others would even attempt. His ambition, however, was far from satisfied. He then championed a military campaign of unprecedented scale, the audacious and colossal Sicilian Expedition. In the Athenian assembly, against the cautious warnings of his older rival Nicias, he painted a picture of immense wealth and easy victory, convincing the citizens to launch a massive naval invasion of the island of Sicily. It was to be his crowning achievement, a move that would make Athens the undisputed master of the Greek world. But as the fleet prepared to sail, a dark omen cast a shadow over the entire enterprise. On the eve of the expedition's departure in 415 BC, the city of Athens awoke to a shocking act of sacrilege. Numerous sacred statues, known as Hermae, had been mysteriously mutilated throughout the city. A wave of panic and paranoia swept through the streets. Suspicion, fueled by his political enemies, quickly fell upon Alcibiades and his circle, who were known for their drunken revelries. His rivals cleverly waited until he had sailed with the fleet, knowing his immense popularity would protect him if he were present in Athens. Then they struck, accusing him not only of the mutilation, but of a far more heinous crime, profaning the sacred Eleusinian mysteries during a private party. Faced with these charges of impiety, Alcibiades was tried in absentia. The verdict was swift. He was condemned to death. His property was confiscated, and a reward of 1 silver talent was officially posted for his capture. A state ship was dispatched to Sicily to recall him from the expedition he had orchestrated. But instead of returning to Athens to face certain execution, he made a decision that would forever alter the course of the war. He feigned compliance, agreeing to follow the state escort ship named Salaminia in his own vessel. However, this was merely a ruse. When the ships put ashore at the southern Italian port of Thurii, Alcibiades and his accused companions slipped away from their guards and vanished. He escaped, and his destination was unthinkable: Sparta, Athens' most hated enemy. He arrived not as a beggar or a refugee, but as Athens' most brilliant strategist, ready to sell its secrets to ensure his own survival and inflict revenge on the city that had betrayed him. Alcibiades, the charismatic Athenian, arrived in Sparta and offered them the one thing they desperately needed: his brilliant military mind. He advised the Spartans on how to decisively defeat his own people. Acting on his counsel, Sparta fortified a permanent base in Attica, a move that crippled the Athenian economy. He also persuaded them to send a skilled general to Sicily, which ultimately led to the complete and utter annihilation of the Athenian invasion force. The very expedition he had championed ended in catastrophic failure, thanks to his own betrayal. But Alcibiades' time in Sparta was not to last. His Athenian charm and arrogance clashed with the Spartan way of life. His downfall, however, came from a familiar weakness. While the Spartan king Agis II was away leading the army, Alcibiades is said to have seduced his wife, Queen Timea. Legend has it that he even boasted that he did so a child of his might one day rule Sparta. When the affair was discovered, Alcibiades was marked for death. Once again, he had to flee for his life. His next destination was the Achaemenid Empire, the vast Persian superpower. He sought refuge with the powerful satrap Tissaphernes, a Persian governor. Here again, Alcibiades made himself indispensable. He played a complex double game, advising the Persians to prolong the war between Athens and Sparta, weakening both to Persia's advantage. He whispered in Tissaphernes' ear, manipulating Persian policy to serve his own ultimate goal, a return to Athens. According to Thucydides, Alcibiades also advised the Achaemenid king, Darius II, and therefore he may have traveled to Susa or Babylonia to encounter him. From this position of influence in the Persian court, he began to play a masterful and dangerous double game. A political revolution in Athens, which Alcibiades himself had helped instigate from afar, overthrew the democracy and established an oligarchy known as the 400. He had sent messages to the Athenian commanders like Thrasybulus, plotting the coup, suggesting that he could secure Persian gold for them, but only if they abandoned the unreliable democracy. However, the Athenian fleet, stationed at the island of Samos, was horrified by the news from home. The sailors and their commanders, staunch Democrats, refused to recognize the new government and declared themselves the true representatives of Athens. Seeing an opportunity in this season, Alcibiades completely changed his tune. He convinced the Democrats that he was their only hope. He argued that he, and he alone, could secure Persian support and funds if they recalled him. In this astounding political maneuver, he positioned himself as the indispensable middleman. He had convinced the oligarchs to seize power with the promise of Persian aid, and now he was promising that same aid to the Democrats to help them overthrow the oligarchs. But will his plan work? In spite of the failure of the negotiations, Alcibiades would be successfully reinstated as an Athenian general by the fleet at Samos in 411 BC, largely due to the staunch support of the democratic commander Thrasybulus, who recognized Alcibiades' unparalleled talent as the key to Athens' survival. Alcibiades proved that his military genius was undiminished. He immediately took command and went on a spectacular winning streak. His campaign began with the Battle of Abydos, where the Spartan fleet, confident after previous games, was caught off guard. Alcibiades, using swift and coordinated maneuvers, delivered a substantial blow. But the true masterstroke came soon after, at the decisive Battle of Cyzicus in 410 BC. This was a total annihilation. Alcibiades lured the entire Spartan navy into a trap. Using his ships to feign a retreat, he sprang an ambush alongside Thrasybulus and Conon, completely destroying the Spartan navy and eliminating their admiral, Mindarus, who was killed in the fighting. The Spartan message sent home after the defeat was famously short and desperate. Ships gone, Mindarus dead, men starving. What next? He followed this monumental victory with the successful siege of Chalcedon, an important Athenian ally that had defected to the Spartans. Through a combination of naval blockade and strategic diplomacy, he forced the Spartan garrison to surrender, securing vital trade routes once more. Slowly but surely, through a series of stunning strategic victories, Alcibiades was turning the tide of the war back in Athens' favor, paving the way for his triumphant return. After years of exile and a string of incredible victories, Alcibiades finally resolved to return home in the spring of 407 BC. But this was no simple homecoming. He was still technically a man condemned to death, and his caution was extreme. He first sailed to the island of Samos, gathering ships and money, and then made careful inquiries to gauge the political mood in Athens. Only when his friends assured him the city was ready to welcome him back did he dare to proceed. He finally sailed into Athens' port Piraeus, where a massive crowd had gathered, eager to see the legendary figure. He hesitated on his ship, scanning the faces in the crowd, until he saw his cousin and friends motioning him ashore. As he stepped on land, the city erupted. He was greeted with a hero's welcome, the people celebrating the return of their savior.
Yet his enemies noted a dark omen. His return coincided with the Plinteria, a holy day considered the unluckiest of the year, a time when the sacred statue of Athena was shrouded and cleansed. To them, it was a sign that this triumphant return was doomed from the start. For the moment, however, all was forgiven. The state officially canceled the charges against him and restored his property. In a powerful show of defiance against Sparta, Alcibiades then re-established the sacred land procession to the temple at Eleusis, a religious rite abandoned for years because the Spartan army occupied the countryside. With Athenian soldiers at his back, he restored the city's honor. In response, the people granted him the ultimate authority, electing him strategos autocrator, supreme commander of both land and sea. But the absolute power granted to Alcibiades was fragile, and his enemies were waiting for him to make a single mistake. That mistake came at the Battle of Notium in 406 BC. While pursuing Spartan forces, Alcibiades left the main fleet in the temporary command of his personal helmsman, Antiochus, with one strict order: do not engage the enemy under any circumstances. Antiochus, arrogant and eager to win his own glory, disobeyed. He took a small squadron of ships to taunt the Spartan fleet, hoping to draw them into a trap. But the brilliant Spartan commander, Lysander, was not so easily fooled. He turned the ambush around, sinking Antiochus's ship and routing the Athenian force that came to his aid. It was a small but humiliating and completely unnecessary defeat. When news reached Athens, the people's trust was shattered. All the old suspicions resurfaced. His enemies pounced, accusing him of negligence and incompetence. Stripped of his command and knowing a return to Athens meant certain death, Alcibiades fled into a final exile at a remote castle in Thrace. From there, he could only watch as Athens crumbled. He even tried to warn the Athenian generals of their catastrophic tactical error just before the Battle of Agis, but they arrogantly dismissed him. The subsequent destruction of the Athenian fleet ended the Peloponnesian War. With Sparta victorious and a brutal oligarchy, the 30 tyrants in control of Athens, Alcibiades was now the most dangerous man alive. He was a symbol of the old democracy and a military genius who could rally forces against the new regime. He was a loose end that both Sparta and the new Athenian rulers needed to eliminate. His end came not on the battlefield, but in a remote fortress in Phrygia, in modern-day Turkey, in the year 404 BC. The circumstances of his death are shrouded in mystery. Some accounts say he was assassinated by Spartan agents, others that it was at the orders of the Persians, or perhaps even by the brothers of a woman he had seduced. His assassins, fearing to face him in direct combat, set his house on fire. Alcibiades reportedly rushed out, armed with a dagger, only to be cut down by a shower of arrows. So who was the real Alcibiades? Was he a patriot who, despite his flaws, won some of Athens' greatest victories? Or was he a narcissistic traitor whose personal ambitions led to the downfall of the Athenian Empire? He changed allegiances as easily as he changed his women, serving Athens, then Sparta, then the Persians, and then Athens once again. Each time, he offered brilliant and often decisive advice. Was his downfall a result of his own hubris and scandalous behavior? Or was he a victim of a volatile political climate, a genius that his own city could neither trust nor afford to be without? The case of Alcibiades remains open. A brilliant general, a charismatic politician, and a notorious betrayer. His story is a timeless mystery, a cautionary tale of talent and temptation, and the fine line between greatness and ruin.